Okay, so we are on. So welcome, guys, and thank you for joining us for the fifth and final door to inner peace. And this is the last one of these. It's probably the most profound, maybe not the easiest one to wrap our thinking minds around, but if we can review the previous doors, it'll set us a bit of a foundation for how we can approach this one. Before we start, actually, there is a quote I just caught on Facebook, and it's really just to set the tone and help us to recognize that we're in good company with this stuff. And this is Albert Einstein. He said, "I like to experience the universe as one harmonious whole. Every cell has life, matter too has life. It is energy solidified. The basic laws of the universe are simple, but because our senses are limited, we can't grasp them. There is a pattern in creation. If we look at this tree outside whose roots search beneath the pavement for water, or a flower which sends its sweet smell to the pollinating bees, or even our own selves and the inner forces that drive us to act, we can see that we all dance to a mysterious tune. We are moved by the same living spirit that moves the universe." And I think that's quite a nice way to enter this review of the first four doors. So door one really is our foundation for compassion. And door one says, I am deserving of care and I'm capable of caring for myself. And door number two encourages us to let go of the past. It says there are no wrong turns. Every step I take is an opportunity for growth. And door number three reminds us that we can't always choose what happens, but we can choose our attitude towards it. And door three is my first choice, is my attitude. Door four connects us with ourselves, it connects us with each other, and it connects us with the planet. And it gives us a sense of belonging and a place to feel at home. And it is, I am a property of the earth and am subject to the laws of nature. So each of these doors, they have their own uses. They'll all have different times. And door five is a journey of humility. And it's about questioning the truthfulness of many of the assumptions that we make up about life. And we'll start to peel away some of the assumptions, some of the labels and some of the layers, and hopefully find that we're much more ourselves when we let go of what we're not. And door number five is, at home in awareness, my perspective is always flexible. And this is a doorway to peace because it's so easy to become fixed on a single perspective. And a single perspective, by definition, will always be limited, because a perspective is a way of looking at something. And a way of looking at something is not the way the thing is. And the quote I sent out in the email for this is by, I don't know if this is pronounced correctly, Sion San, and he was a monk, and he said, you must attain the mind that sees a bird, not the word bird. You must attain the mind that knows the mountain, not the one that knows the word mountain. And there's a substantial difference here between reality and our thoughts about reality, the things, the labels that we paint on to reality. And to give us an idea of perspective and familiarize ourselves with the usefulness of it, if we considered an architect who had only taken one perspective when he drew the house, we wouldn't probably want to live in that house because there would be bits missing. Or if the builder had only used one plan, it probably wouldn't be very habitable. At the very least, it would have bits missing. So from a practical sense in the physical world, we can see that having multiple perspectives is always going to be helpful. And there's a lovely old story, I think it's Indian or Chinese story, about a group of blind men and an elephant. And these blind men hear that an elephant's come into town, and they've not seen an elephant before, and they don't know what one is. So they all go down into the town and get round the elephant. And the first one touches the elephant, and he gets the elephant's leg, and he's like, this feels like a tree trunk. I think an elephant must be a palm tree, or must be like a palm tree. And the other guy, he's touching the side of the elephant, saying, no, you've got it wrong. This elephant's like a wall. And then the one up the head end has got the elephant's trunk, and he's like, guys, you're both wrong. This elephant's like a snake. And then the one at the back end has got hold of the elephant's tail, and this one thinks it's a bit of rope. And of course, they're all convinced that they've got the right picture. So it highlights to us the importance of understanding different perspectives and how we can all view the same thing in a different way. But it also highlights the importance of humility when it comes to understanding the world around us. And if we can agree that having more perspectives on a situation gives us more information, then what is the doorway to peace here? What can we do about it? The doorway is humility, because humility shifts our perspective from I'm absolutely right to I could be wrong. And the question we can ask ourselves when we're faced with this is this true? Is what I'm telling myself about this actually true? And if it's not true, then it reveals itself as an illusion. It reveals itself as a trick of the mind. But if it is true, or we believe it really is true, then what's another way of looking at this? Are we the one on the elephant's tail thinking it's a bit of rope? Is there another way to look at it? Could that also be true? And we can practice this in our daily life, in times where we're quiet and we're having maybe some difficult thoughts. It's easy to see this in building a house, to take perspectives when building a house, but a little bit more difficult when we start considering our own emotions. But if we can practice, then we can start to halt any of the false assumptions that we have about the world around us. And I use it myself with anxiety. And I know that a lot of my anxiety is down to, or is its underlying thought or belief is, I'm not good enough. I can't cope with this. I'm not capable of what I'm about to do. So this sense of fear arises and takes over. But when I take the time to investigate, is that true? Is that absolutely true? Am I not good enough for this? And just asking that question, just dropping that question, reveals the truth that is not true. Or at least, what's another way? What if I was capable? How would that feel? So we can play with perspectives. We can bring a different perspective on board. But this gets a bit tricky when we're faced with somebody else's perspective. This is when relationships come in, and this is where a lot of our problems exist, is in relationships. And it doesn't matter what relationship it is. It can be a relationship with a partner, a friend, a stranger, a boss, an employee, whoever. We've got these relationships all around us. And even if it's just one versus one, there's our version of what's happened, our perspective. There's their perspective. There's our version of their perspective. There's their version of our perspective. So we've got these multiple versions of the same thing. And if we can be completely objective, we'll go, okay, well, what's the truth, is in all of this? But we don't do that. We find it very, very difficult to take on somebody else's perspective. And why is that? Why do we, when we're confronted with somebody else's perspective, why do we find it so hard to take it on? And the suggestion I'm making in this is it's the subjectivity of it. This is where we lose our perspective, because we're often more attached to this perspective simply because it's ours. There's a sense of me or my that is attached to it. And this is where separation begins. It's when we identify ourselves with a thought. And looking back at last session, we talked about cause and effect. And we've talked about this in our sessions as well at Men's Craft, that these thoughts are a natural occurrence, largely based on our past and how our past is interacting with this moment. But so if we can treat them thoughts lightly, we're less likely to suffer, we're less likely to come into conflict. But if we identify with that thought, and there's the Latin word for identify is idem facari, and idem means the same, and facari means to make. So when we identify with something, we make it the same. So what we're doing in this situation is we're making ourselves the same as our thought. So our self becomes invested in an idea or a concept, which is based on a thin string of our past that trails behind us. So what then happens is, because we've identified with that thought, we've become that thought, all of our survival mechanisms come into play. This fight or flight system that we've talked about comes in to protect this concept, protect this imagination. And they work at it like it's true and like our life depends on it. It's no wonder that we become so invested in it, because our nervous system believes that if we lose this thought, then we lose our life, that our life is on the line. The fear is, if we let go of our thoughts, let go of our ideas, and let go of our beliefs, that we'll lose ourselves. But the opposite is true. We lose what we're not, because we're not our thoughts. And this is a doorway to peace, because at home in awareness, my perspective is always flexible. And we can always change our perspective. Now, what this does is it suggests that to have a flexible perspective, we need to be at home in awareness. So what is that? Well, when we take on a different position, when we shift our position mentally to a different perspective, we're coming out of this identification with it. There's a sense of liberation in that, when we're no longer fixed to an idea. The threat level drops and we enter a bigger space. We enter the realm of awareness. We expand. If our self is identifying with a thought, we might benefit from looking at what is this self that we're talking about. So what is our self? And it's quite a deep one. And I'm not here to tell you what you are, but I can tell you what you're not. And you're not a thought. None of us are thoughts. Thoughts come and go, yet we remain. And we're not just a body, because the body comes and goes and we remain. And that's not a spiritual or religious thing. It's science. Our body will be rebuilt anew in 8 years' time. All of the cells of our body are being replaced. And 98% of our body will be replaced in 8 years. And those cells, they're created from the food that we eat, essentially. Some of the cells are recycled, but it's all from the food that we've eaten. And if we go down even smaller and at a molecular and atomic level, our bodies are made up of matter that has existed for billions of years. In supernovas, in star explosions, this is where these elements came from, these bigger elements came from. And if we go even deeper than that, down into subatomic level, there's all kinds of weird stuff going on. The particles are coming in and out of existence as we know it. And that's like enough to fry the brain. So we don't deny the usefulness of a body. We don't deny the usefulness of thoughts. In fact, we can love and appreciate this because these are valid and essential parts of our experience. But one way of playing with this idea is to look at ourselves as having two aspects. We've got the story aspect and we've got the awareness aspect. And the story aspect is essential to our survival. This is all our history. This is all the label, all the names, all our personality. And if you go deeper, it's part of the soul. This is our journey through life, and it's what gives us meaning. And this is all very real, and we can relate to each other with this story. But it doesn't stop that story being made up of thoughts. So that whole story, everything about our past is a thought. And it's essential for that story to exist, for us to grow and to survive, but it's also essential for our evolution to let go of it, to allow this story to be here, but to not identify so strongly with it. So if there's this story that's here, this is the bits, the facts, the bits about us that we can write down and measure. There's something else here as well. And there's something that's more consistent than the story. It's more essential. And we might call it awareness. We might call it consciousness. We might call it attention or light, luminosity, silence, spaciousness. Whatever we call it, it's always here. And it's hidden in plain sight. It's so obvious that we overlook it. And the thing about the awareness that I'm pointing to in this session, we can only point to it because it's prior to words, it's prior to thoughts, and it's prior to labels. And while words and labels have their uses, it's the nature of words to separate things. They by themselves are a single perspective. They're an isolated fragment of reality. And the awareness itself it's less tangible, but it's always here. And there's a million words to describe it, but none of them are it, because this awareness is before words. If we label awareness, then it becomes a word again, and it's not that. Now, if we're not getting this, that's fine. You know, sometimes the words that I'm using and the way that I'm explaining something won't suit our story. So we don't wrestle with it. We don't fight with it. We just, you know, we wait for the next word to come along. And it's quite confusing and a little bit unnatural to think about awareness and to look into the nature of our awareness, because we're so used to relying on our thinking and our perceptions. But awareness is background to these perceptions. And we'll do this in the meditation later, where we start to notice what's behind our perceptions, what's prior to every experience. And we might only glimpse it, but over time these glimpses turn into seeing. And it's a bit like looking into a dark room. Gradually our eyes get used to it, and the contents of the room reveal themselves. And what reveals itself is really our motivation for this, because when we recognize our nature as awareness, when we're at home in awareness, then we are at peace, because all of the problems that exist outside of us reveal themselves to be illusions. We see through the veil, the story. Now, a good teaching or a pointer is a bit like a lamp, and that will light up certain things, but different pointers work for different people at different times. They'll either point to something for you now, or they won't. But if they don't worry. It wasn't meant for you. You know, I like to think of them as keys. And I know from the teachings I've read and the pieces I've listened to, I can listen to the same piece 3, 4, 5 times, read the same piece over and over again, and each time something different will land differently. And I'm not an expert at this, but I'm going to do my best to create an environment where we get to familiarize ourselves with the nature of awareness. And then I'll put some pointers out there. So just remember during this practice, all of the stuff we know about meditation is that we're going to get distracted. We're going to struggle to follow exactly what's being said. We're going to set our intention to go in this direction, but what's going to happen is we're going to bounce here, there, and everywhere. And that's all normal, and that's okay. So we just bring in those mindful attitudes of patience, of kindness, of non-judgment. And we bring those attitudes to our experience every time we feel like we're not quite getting it right. So we're going to begin the meditation practice. And I'm just going to have a moment because I've been talking a lot. Now, the meditation will go like we usually do. We'll settle the mind with the breath, give ourselves a chance to come out of too much thinking. Then we'll come into a bit of a body scan, and we'll open the body scan to the room around us. And then I'm just going to put some pointers out there. So just remember, if they're not landing, that's absolutely fine. So I like using the bell to begin the meditation. So just using that sound to find us where we are now. You may wish to have the eyes open or closed. And finding a position or posture that represents our intentions to be awake, but allows us to be relaxed at the same time. So we can feel the weight of the body as well as the lightness of the mind. It may help to lift the back of the head slightly, but ultimately we listen to our own body, and the main aim is to be comfortable in our own body here. So finding the breath. Noticing the breath in our body where we feel it the most. So how do I know that I'm breathing right now? What sensations are telling me that I'm breathing? And we just narrow our attention like a torchlight on that particular area, wherever we feel breathing the most. And without expectation, without judgment, we rest our attention in that area, curious of what it's like to be breathing now. And if it's helpful, we can deepen the breath slightly. Can we soften the breath at all? Smoothen it out. Treating each breath as a new thing. Noticing that each breath graciously makes way for the next. And can we build a nice even rhythm of breath so our in-breath and our out-breath are a similar length? And this doesn't have to be perfect. Might even visualize the waves of the ocean moving up the beach and then back down, in the same way that the breath moves in and out of the body. So we're going to start at the top of the body, in and around the area of the face, with this nice steady even breath. Can we notice any sensations in and around the face? What does the face feel like? Can we soften the face? And the head, the whole head, can we feel anything? Any sensations at all? Maybe there's some tickling or itching. Maybe heat. Can we breathe in and out of this space? And letting go of the head, noticing the throat, the neck, the shoulders. Maybe even the chest. Noticing sensations on the outside of the body, maybe contact of clothing. Noticing maybe more subtle sensations inside the body. Remembering that it's perfectly normal for the mind to wander, and we can just notice this. Very gently, kindly return our awareness back into this body. And we're filling our chest, neck, and shoulders, we're filling that with awareness. And curiosity. Letting go of that particular area and noticing the spine, so maybe even the whole back. Can we feel it? How do we know it's there? And if we can't feel it, then we notice that we can't feel it. And that's okay as well. There's no right or wrong way. There's no expectation to feel anything. And if the mind wanders 10 times or 1,000 times, we just gently encourage it back. Like we would if we were training a puppy. Come back here, come back home into the body. Filling our back with awareness. We're not trying to get anywhere with this. We're just noticing. Noticing if this feels easy or does it feel difficult. And letting go of the back, whether we felt anything or not, and bringing our awareness to the area of the belly, the abdomen. Is it moving? Is it still? Can we feel it at all, or is it blank? Noticing how it feels to be sat here. So bringing our attention into the seat, into the hips, pelvis, all the way down the legs, the big thighs into the knees, into the lower legs and the feet on the floor. So expanding our awareness to include the whole lower body. Curious. Without any preconceptions, without any judgment. What is here? Maybe a pain. Maybe a discomfort. Expanding the awareness even bigger and getting a full sense of the whole body from the toes all the way up through the legs, up through the torso, the shoulders into the head. And including our arms and hands. Can we zoom in on the hands? Can we feel anything to do with the hands? Is there any tingling or pulsating? Is there any contact? What do the hands feel like from the inside? And back, zooming out again to the whole body. Allowing our awareness to expand to include the upper body, the lower body, the head. And feeling a sense as well of the space that we're occupying and the space around us. Can we sense it rather than think it? Can we feel it? So we can let the mind stop now. So whatever the mind is doing now, just letting it come to a stop. Giving it permission to rest. Allowing the breath to return to normal. Whatever way it wants to come in and out is absolutely fine. And the mind will still arise, thinking will arise, But during this meditation from now on, we're not seeking any answers from the mind. We're seeking no answers from thoughts. Because we're not searching or striving or gaining more knowledge here. We're not even seeking new understandings, because all that stuff belongs to thinking. So there's no effort required. We're coming back home, and that takes no effort at all. Noticing the space that we're in here. Noticing even that we are the space. And in noticing if the mind is wrestling with it, if it's finding it confusing. Because it's the mind's purpose to think, to label. And thinking cannot exist without labels. So can we drop the labels? Gradually letting go of the labels, letting go of the label of thinking. Letting go of the label meditating. Dropping the label understanding. Dropping even the label awareness or noticing. Can we drop our name? Can we drop our gender? Can we drop the label me? Noticing that without the label me, that I am still here. Can we drop the label of time? Of future and of past? Because they don't exist. Doesn't mean they haven't or they won't. It means right now they don't exist. And this now never ends. Time exists, but only as a thought. Time is thought, and thought is time. So what is the nature of this awareness? Because whatever is here now is here in awareness. It's made of awareness. Spaciousness or aliveness or stillness. So awareness itself has no memory. Awareness has no preferences. Awareness is timeless. Even the word awareness isn't it. Awareness is this knowable background to experience. In the same way that silence is the background to sound. Sounds disturb the background of silence like objects disturb awareness. Sounds are born from silence. Objects are born from awareness. Awareness is like a still, clear pond, and sounds and thoughts are like ripples on the surface, and the ripples are made of the pond, but the pond is deeper than the ripples. Awareness is not an object, but objects are made of awareness. And can we notice if there's any boundary between our awareness and the objects of awareness? So however we are now, just noticing what is here. Just being in this openness, vastness. And as we come toward the end of this practice, can we take a moment just to dedicate some some peace, some kindness to anyone who might be needing it right now. So we're sending out some kind vibes out into the universe. And we do so knowing those kind vibes come right back towards us as well. So when we might be in need of kindness, it's always there. And just becoming more aware of this physical body again, and maybe by rocking or moving the fingers or feet. And in our own time and in our own way, following the sound of the bell